Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about generative AI in the database market. We'll also look at how AI affects enterprise workflow, and we'll dive into issues around the data market and large language models. It's a lot of hefty topics. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major industry expert. With me is Chet Kapoor, Chief Executive Officer at Datastax. Chet, do we really know enough to handle all those complicated topics?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I won't start the thing like, fake it till you make it, because that's not the thing. I actually
Yes.
think that we've learned a lot over the last 30 years of seeing different waves. And I think we can learn a lot from history and try to make sure that we're prepared.
So very true. Well, I want to dive in. I think it might be worth getting kind of the 11 seconds on what exactly Datastax does. We'll get to what the real product pitch later, but I mean, I know a lot of people know what it is. Tell those who are not as familiar, what does Datastax actually do?
We help customers developers build generative AI apps that change the trajectory of enterprises they work for. And so we have the most scalable vector database in the world, and it is based on Apache Cassandra. And we have some generative AI streaming technology that actually puts information in and out of the vector database, as well as we actually bring all kinds of data sources together so that developers can actually build more than just chatbots. They can build autonomous agents that affect core processes for companies. And so super exciting time. We've always had what we would call a data platform or real-time data platform. And what is really interesting is that the market has kind of come to us instead of us going to the market, because we have the most scalable data platform in the world for real-time apps. And now all real-time apps are AI apps, right? And so it just works beautifully for the technology that we built over the last decade.
So it's if someone said, "Oh, Datastax, they're a database company," is that person accurate if they say that?
I would say we used to be a database company.
Okay.
We've moved to being a cloud company because we focus a lot on database as a service. But most importantly, we're an AI company. And I'll tell you why. Not because AI is hot. It's because what do you use data for?
To feed artificial intelligence. I mean, AI goes nowhere without data.
So there is no AI without data, and we provide the most scalable data platform in the world, and hence we are an AI company. And so that's how I think about it. I think it's a lot more than databases, but we are very happy being the most scalable data platform or database platform in the world. Very happy with it. But I think it's absolutely, if I think, James, about my conversations with developers and my conversations with CIOs, right, the two constituents and architects, it's all about building generative AI apps.
Yes. Oh, totally. Well, all right. That brings me to my first extremely insightful question, which is it's one of these 4-hour questions. I think we could really talk about it for 4 hours. Chet, how do you see the rise of generative AI affecting enterprise workflows? And obviously, that's a massive topic. One of the topics, of course, is that it streamlines things. It also might confuse a certain amount of things, because management doesn't really yet know how to handle generative AI. What do you see out there when you talk with clients?
This is actually an 8-hour discussion, not a 4-hour discussion. But it's something. This is something that our developers are very firmly in experimentation mode, right? Anything that they see, they're playing with, right? And so that's a good thing, right? That's awesome. But the CIOs are getting calls from the CEOs and from their business colleagues and saying, the only conversation we're having on our dinner table is about ChatGPT. Why can't we do this, right? And why can't we make that happen? And so they are definitely thinking this through. So they asked me, Chet, what do you think, right? Having long-term relationships and us really being part of their data strategy.
Right.
And I've gone back to what I have seen, not what I have read, right? And what I've learned over the years is that every wave, and I'll talk about how generative AI is different because we chatted about it before we got started.
Sure.
Is every wave goes through two kinds of use cases. There's the incremental use case, what I affectionately call bolt-ons, right? And then there is the transformational use case, which I affectionately call core.
Yep.
So bolt-ons are, if you remember, we used to, the first thing was just let's put a static web page on mobile. But guess what? That was just a bolt-on. Then came retail banking. How often do we go to branches anymore? We don't, right? And so that affected the bank P&L significantly. But the way they shut down their branches, the way that took time because it affected the core processes of a bank. So I think those two use cases are still what our customers will go through. And the type of customer you are changes the time frame in which you will adopt those use cases. So SMBs are doing, startups, mid-sized companies are doing incremental use cases now. Chatbots, co-pilots, all that's happening now. Large enterprises are going to do that over 9 months because there's more risk. You have a brand. You're regulated. Financial services companies cannot have a chatbot and give advice when the chatbot's hallucinating, right? Because they are legally bound to the advice that they give, right? So that will take longer to do. But the transformational use cases is where the real difference is. That's where the world changes around us. And SMBs will do that over the next 12 to 18 months. And I think large enterprises, doesn't matter whether they're regulated or not, will take about 24 plus months to actually implement those transformational use cases.
Well, let me introduce a note of skepticism just for a moment.
Sure,
and I think one of the challenges is going to be is that the technology, as we spoke about before we started, is relentless in the way it's changing. It's just devouring the landscape. So generative AI in May of 2023 is not going to be the same as generative AI in January of 2024. So the technology is this shifting target. Plus, I sometimes think that the executives and a lot of the folks in the C-suite don't fully understand the technology, which doesn't mean that they're not bright people. They are, but it's generative AI is complicated. It's more complicated than cloud ever was. It's more unpredictable than cloud was. It's not just like data analytics. It's the first technology that actually grows without human help. It can grow by itself. It can iterate by itself. So technology is changing. The folks don't totally understand it. I think it's going to be pretty challenging.
So, yeah, and all true. So let me give you a perspective on all three. The first thing is the technology will settle down. It always does. Every wave you think about, when we started building mobile apps, when we would start doing the web apps, everybody was doing different things. There was web servers were not there. App servers came, and so there was a bunch of technology just settles in. I believe the stack to build generative AI apps, and I'm not talking about simplistic chatbots. I'm talking about things that are what we call autonomous agents. I think that stack generally settles in the next 18 months. But for the next 18 months, there will be a lot of experimentation. By the way, the generative AI stack is getting settled in for startups now because they're building businesses on it, right? We have startups who have already put things in production on our products, right? And are going to go to $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of consumption over the next 18 months. So that part is already started. So I think the experimentation will continue, but I think there will be a time. There'll be 18 months, 24 months, maybe 9 months, some forward-thinking companies. I think the stack will stabilize. I think things will move around the stack, but I think the core stack will get stabilized. Like, for example, are you using LLM on-premise? Are you using it in the cloud? Do you have to use a vector database? Great. Are you using some AI toolchain? The toolchain may change, right? They may have version 1, version 2, version 3, but they'll start having the toolchain. What are you using to integrate all your data sources, right? How are you doing streaming? How are you doing generative AI streaming? Are you doing it old school? So those things will all settle in.
Well,
I think
all right,
go
ahead. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead and finish it, please.
The second part is the CIOs. I think because of what they are, because of how the relentless pace of technology, I think the CIOs, I believe, are doing the smart things. And I'll tell you, I'm only saying it from the people I talk to, and maybe this is the best of the bunch, right? But their perspective is just twofold. I'm going to let the developers experiment like crazy. Let them start projects fail, And the second thing is I'm going to continue to think about where I can get the most amount of impact.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they're doing actually the smart thing, which is they are not getting in and saying, I need to be as technical as a developer. Notice I'm not using the word architect, I'm saying developer. Right? So the practitioner, the person who's using it, they're giving a lot of room for the practitioner to go off and use things. But what they are focusing on is what are the use cases for the incremental use cases and what are the transformational use cases. So I actually think at least the ones I'm interacting with are getting it right. Now, just for the record, they're not moving as fast as they should.
Okay.
Clearly not. But at some point, they have to do risk assessment on the brand, getting the wrong information to different people and things like that. So that part is there. These things work out in such a way that you will miss it by about 6 months or 12 months, no matter what. Mm-hmm. But you miss a lot if you screw it up, right? Because it is not cloud. Cloud was not visible to business executives at all enterprises that I work with, right? Mobile was. Cloud was not visible. Generative AI is visible to everybody. Right. So that's my second point. Go ahead. You had a question.
Well, I was going to say, really, you've brought up the subject of the data market. I think it's a hot topic in terms of the large language models. And some companies are thinking, well, do we need our own proprietary large language model with this niche data that we depend on a lot? It's expensive to build. Should we borrow a large language model? But how do we handle the idea of large language models? Because underneath the headlines, that's the thing that's really making your AI app go. So what's your take on the world of LLMs?
I'll give three different comments. One is I was at a conference it's called Enterprise Retreat in Half Moon Bay, and I saw OpenAI present, which was fascinating. They obviously think that they are too expensive. They say that.
They say that large language models are too expensive?
Yeah, the usage models are really, and they've got to bring the cost down because it's cost prohibitive. Anybody you talk to will tell you it's too expensive. And on top of that, by the way, there's a shortage of GPUs, and what lands up happening is when this is simple supply demand, there's a hell of a lot of demand. Right. And because of that, because supply is short, you can actually raise prices. So I think that part is happening. Then everybody knows in the industry that this will straighten out and flatten out over a period of time. So I think that part will happen. But the more important question is, when you're building an autonomous agent, are you actually going to be doing it off Bard or GPT or whatever else you do it? And my take is going to be no. I think you will still use very large language models that you go off and call in the cloud. But a large portion of what you do will be language models that your agents use locally for the work they do. Right? I don't need my language model to run my company to recite haikus. I don't. Right. I don't need haiku help, right? I need to go off and actually run a process. And it's a very specific thing to my company, which is one of the reasons why I win. And I want to make sure my agent works with the language model specific for this. And I think a lot of people, whether they run it, I think a large portion of people will run it in the cloud. There'll be many people that run it in data centers, right? And go and make that happen. And I think, so number one thing you said was cost, right? I think that will come down. But the second thing is, I don't think this is Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and Bedrock and all that. I think there's a lot more. And I actually think, believe it or not, I think, Llama 2 from Meta is actually pretty cool. You can run it on a laptop.
But competitively priced or not necessarily?
It's open source.
It's open source.
It's open source, so it's perfect.
The average company can really set that up and use it though without technical expertise.
Absolutely, and you can take a look at what go to Hugging Face and you'll see so many different models that are coming out. So we think the future of autonomous agents is agents that have their own models that may or may not call home. And by the way, if you really get deep into talking to the hyperscalers, they will tell you that's the future as well.
Wait, clarify that. What is the future?
So the future is that agents have their own models that they work with, but they also call very large language models in the cloud, but not as often as you think.
In other words, you're saying there's something like ChatGPT, not ChatGPT itself.
Something that is not ChatGPT, but very purpose-built for that specific task.
So think about, I'm a logistics company. Language models.
Correct. So I have a large language model, but it is very specific to logistics, right? Because I want to schedule somebody moving X to Y. That doesn't, I don't need, 100,000 GPUs crunching data for the world. I need a little bit of that because I want weather information and things like that. I want map information. I can get that from Google. But that's only 20% of what I need. The 80% is about where's my boat, where's my ship, where's my plane, where's my train, where are the trucks, right?
Right, right.
And that's the part that a lot of people are not focused on now.
Okay, so let's go to the topic that is very close to the idea of the vector database in making more companies more competitive in the world of AI. What is your view on that? I have a feeling you have a strong opinion on that topic.
I think
The
the way LLMs do things, LLM's native language is embeddings. And the way you search for embeddings is actually through vectors, right? So they vectorize embeddings. You need to make sure that you have now every language model out there in the world, large language model, medium language model, small language model, is nothing. And this is something, James, I talk to CIOs about. LLMs are nothing but part of the system of engagement. Every enterprise has this forever. You have some kind of UX. Forget about what the UX is. It could be phone, it could be web, it could be a chatbot, it could be voice, doesn't matter. But there's a system of record and a system of engagement. We've done this now enough times with the web, and we've done enough with mobile. LLMs are part of your system of engagement. They are practically useless without the system of record, right? So what we do, we are the system of record for everything out there, right? What is Chet's recommendations and relevance on Netflix? What is it? What are the things that Chet has done from a FedEx point of view? Everything I've done at Verizon. How many times have you ordered a latte over at Starbucks? All of that sits in Apache Cassandra and in Datastax, right? So that information is extremely relevant to an LLM, right? Because LLMs are fairly context-free. They don't know anything about chat, right? And so what we bring is context to LLMs, right? And that has to be done through a very scalable vector database that does two things very importantly. It does it with very low latency, and it does it with significant scale. Because let's be very clear, if ChatGPT took 2 days to respond, it wouldn't have been successful.
Right, we need milliseconds.
We need absolute milliseconds, and that's what we do, right? We do that really well. And the other thing a lot of people are forgetting in this generative AI space, it is not just about vectors and embeddings, right? It's also about the data you have on Chat. So you've got to do this concurrent read writes. That means you need to be able to write very quickly, vectorize it, and then be able to read your vectors, but also be able to read the data that Chet is about, right? Independent of the vectors. And so what we bring to the table is we have taken our absolutely massively scalable database, the most scalable database in the universe, right? That's what a NoSQL database that we have. And now we've completely vectorized it. We've run before this meeting, I was just going through some performance numbers, and absolutely beautiful.
Fast, you're saying?
Very fast, very high, very fast, massive scale, very low latency, and the most important thing, highly relevant, because relevancy becomes really important.
Right. Relevancy is, in a sense, the coin of the realm. If it's not really, really relevant, people are not excited about it.
And by the way, that's what we talked about, right? People will not deploy it and things like that. But I think people need to, and by the way, all of this stuff, you need to make sure it's available worldwide, it's secure, it's highly available, right? So all those things we do very, very well. We've been doing it for many years. And so that's why we think this is a beautiful time that the market came and asked for everything that we've been building over the last 5 years.
All right, so I think the really big question, the question that everyone's talking about in boardrooms across America and the world for that matter, is the future of generative AI in the enterprise. We've talked about it somewhat. What if we look a little bit further out, even beyond the next year or so? What are we going to be talking about if we talk about Gen AI and say, 2025, 2026? What are things going to be looking like then, Chet? It's not really an answerable question, but I'll ask you anyway.
So I'll tell you what I have conviction on, and we touched on this before we got started. For all the waves I've been through and rationalizing and using my past experiences and getting us and feeling the technology in my bones, I think this one's going to go faster. I don't think it's going to take that long for it to plow through incremental use case into transformational use case. It'll just go, it'll be relentless on how it happens.
Right.
So that's one. I think speed will matter in this space, right? The second thing I will tell you is 2 to 3 years from now, all incremental use cases, all enterprises would have implemented, right? I just got something this morning from one of our board members, Luke the AI, right? He has sold $16 million of wine, and he's an AI. He's just an AI agent. That's all he is. And $16 million in the last X number of weeks.
This is a chatbot?
This is a chatbot, right? And so this is, my point is, all this will happen so quickly that the incremental use cases will just happen. I can go through what we've done.
What is the name of the chatbot? I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's called Luke the AI. Luke. I should actually look it up as we speak. And it's called Luke the Sales Guy.
All right.
It's what it's called. So it's very interesting. I only listened to half of it. So I think the incremental use cases will happen. I think what people are going to very quickly realize is that it is not about machines against people. And this is really important. I said this at a World Economic Forum thing as well. It's not machines against people. It is people against people with machines.
Yeah.
That's what it's. So it's not AI versus people. It is people versus people with AI. And so what is going to happen is that every person out there is going to have multiple agents. And those agents are going to help us be more productive and make that happen. And so in 2025, we will see that happening more often. It will not be saturated by 25 or 26, but I think you're going to see that happen a lot more because that is the future, right? If I think about our business, we are implementing that right now on how we run our company.
Yeah, it makes sense that the conflict, so to speak, the friction might be people against people with AI. That makes a lot of sense. I sometimes think one of the problems with artificial intelligence and the job market is that it's not like people moving from the farm to the factories and people could be trained. Certainly some people will be trained to handle AI. But part of the problem is that kind of training and education needed is pretty advanced, more than going from the farm to the factory ever was. And so I'm not sure we're set up to really train people like that.
I don't think so. I actually think that, I think in this particular case, I think AI will be able to write code faster than a lot of people. So I think it's going to help. And I think the humans will have to interact with agents like they were their digital twins. And so yes, will we need to reprogram some people on how they do their jobs? The answer is absolutely, we will have to do that. But robots did that for factory workers as well, right? There was everything done manually and the machines started doing a lot of it, but they were still involved. I think there will be a displacement of jobs, James. No question about that. Happens every time. But I think we will come out net positive in making this happen. And I think that part I firmly believe in because everybody gets more productive because of it.
I like the optimism of that. It's a positive vision to end on. Chet, thank you. Fascinating stuff. Thank you for sharing your expertise today. And please do come back and talk with us again sometime.
It is always a pleasure, James. Thank you very much.